Good afternoon, you're watching Anewz. I'm Dilek Tuna. Let's see the headlines. Secretary of State Marco Rubio meets Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov as Trump grows frustrated with Russia over the war in Ukraine. France and the UK sign a historic deal to coordinate nuclear deterrence for the first time. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen survives the no confidence vote. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio has met with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, expressing Washington's frustration over the lack of progress in ending the war in Ukraine.
Hello, boys and girls.
US Secretary of State Marco Rubio says he conveyed Washington's frustration over the lack of progress in ending the war in Ukraine during a meeting with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. The two met on the sidelines of the ASEAN Foreign Ministers Summit in Kuala Lumpur, marking their second face-to-face encounter. Rubio said he urged greater flexibility from Russia to help bring the conflict to an end.
We will engage any time that we have an opportunity to do so, like we did today. I echoed what the President has said, both disappointment and frustration at the lack of progress in peace talks or in a path forward. So we'll continue to engage. We shared some ideas and comments, which I'll take back to Washington as early as this evening in terms of calls and reflected, and perhaps there's something to build on there. But it was a frank conversation. It was an important one. We had it, and we talked about some other items as well and related to the war in Ukraine, but that was obviously the first and foremost topic that we discussed.
The meeting comes as US President Donald Trump, who returned to office this year vowing to end the war swiftly, has grown increasingly frustrated with Russian President Vladimir Putin as the conflict drags on. Trump earlier said he is considering supporting legislation that would impose steep sanctions on Russia, including 500% tariffs on countries that purchase Russian oil, gas, uranium, or other exports. He has also announced a plan to supply weapons to Ukraine through NATO. Under the deal, US weapons would be transferred to NATO, paid for by the alliance, and then redistributed to Ukraine. The package could include defensive Patriot missiles and offensive medium-range rockets, though a final decision on the specific equipment has not yet been made.
The first day of the major conference on Ukraine's reconstruction in Rome brought pledges of more than $10 billion. The fourth conference of its kind also saw the launch of a European flagship fund aimed at rebuilding the war-torn country.
At the La Nuvola Convention Centre in Rome, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni welcomed key leaders, including Volodymyr Zelensky and Ursula von der Leyen, for the fourth major conference on Ukraine's recovery since Russia's full-scale invasion in 2022. World Bank estimates put Ukraine's reconstruction needs at around €500 billion. On day one, pledges topped €10 billion.
For this reason, it has clearly been the subject of our debate. Today, we discussed with Volodymyr. The path for us is clear: to continue to support Ukraine, and on the other hand, to maintain or to indeed increase the pressure on Russia, above all through sanctions.
At the conference, Zelensky called for direct use of frozen Russian assets to fund Ukraine's recovery.
And I ask you to support the Recovery Coalition and help define specific financing mechanisms. We must clearly agree that frozen Russian assets should go toward Ukraine's recovery. Not only the income from these assets, but the assets themselves must be used and much more actively than they are now to help save lives. And we also need a clear system for reconstruction, a special recovery fund, and financing at different levels for Ukraine's national budget and for local communities.
In a significant move, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz announced a European flagship fund aimed at mobilizing private investment. This new initiative, supported by Germany, France, Italy, Poland, the European Investment Bank and the EU Commission, aims to channel strategic financing into Ukraine's reconstruction, a step Merz called essential for Ukraine's future in the European Union.
Representatives of the United States participated in a meeting of the so-called Coalition of the Willing for the first time, as plans were announced for a new multinational force that would support Kyiv after a potential ceasefire with Moscow. Plans were announced at a virtual meeting co-chaired by Britain and France. The multinational reassurance force will be headquartered in Paris, and the HQ will rotate to London after 12 months. When the force deploys, a coordination cell will also be set up in Kyiv. The force is expected to regenerate Ukraine's land forces, secure its skies and support safer seas. France and Britain have agreed to reinforce cooperation with their respective nuclear arsenals by signing the Northwood Declaration. The move comes as the two European powerhouses seek to respond to growing threats to the continent and uncertainty over their US ally. The deal was announced at the end of President Emmanuel Macron's three-day state visit to the UK on Thursday. Prime Minister Keir Starmer called the pact historic. Macron clarified the move is unrelated to their support for Ukraine and said the message is meant for both allies and adversaries.
We all agree the situation.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has survived a dramatic no-confidence vote in Strasbourg, the first Commission chief in over a decade to face such a challenge. While she remains in office, the political fallout could pose a threat to her long-term leadership.
Ursula von der Leyen has survived a no-confidence vote in the European Parliament, but not without political bruising.
We are going to vote on a motion of censure on the European Commission.
360 MEPs rejected the motion to censure the European Commission President, while 175 voted in favour and 18 abstained. It was the first time since 2014 that such a vote was held. And although von der Leyen emerged unscathed on paper, the fractures within her own ruling coalition were laid bare. The motion was triggered by Romanian lawmaker Gheorghe Pipera from the right-wing ECR group, citing concerns over transparency, including von der Leyen's undisclosed text exchanges with Pfizer's CEO during the EU's COVID-19 vaccine negotiations, and accusations that the Commission President has centralised too much power in Brussels. But while Pipera admitted the motion was unlikely to pass, he called it a healthy exercise, claiming it has opened a Pandora's box of dissent that could lead to further challenges against von der Leyen in the months ahead. Despite backing from her own European People's Party, many MEPs from other left-wing and socialist blocs hesitated, some threatening to abstain in protest over her perceived rightward shift and backpedalling on the Green Deal. The Liberals ultimately backed down, saying they wouldn't aid the far right in destabilising the EU. Still, the political cost remains clear. Vice President of the Parliament, Katarina Barley, warned that this was von der Leyen's last chance, with many on the centre-left. And while her presidency survives, for now, the vote has weakened the coalition she'll need long-term. As the EU enters a period of budget battles and negotiations on its global role, Ursula von der Leyen faces growing resistance from her own ranks.
Yemen's Houthi leader says his group will continue blocking maritime shipments linked to Israel, warning companies against passing through the Red Sea and nearby waters. Houthi leader Abdul Malik al-Houthi reiterated in his weekly televised address that transporting goods for Israel through the Red Sea, Gulf or Aden or Arabian Sea will not be allowed. He said the decision remains in place as long as Israel continues its actions in Gaza. Shipping insurance costs have soared after recent Houthi attacks on 2 vessels killed 4 crew members. The Red Sea, a vital trade route, has seen traffic drop sharply since the attacks began in late 2023. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, speaking to hostage families in Washington, conveyed cautious optimism about reaching a deal to free more Israelis held by Hamas. While acknowledging that a full release of all hostages isn't immediately feasible, he expressed hope that a deal could be finalised within the coming days. Joining us now is Maurice Hish from the Jerusalem Centre for Security and Foreign Affairs, live from Jerusalem. Thanks for joining us on the program, Maurice.
Hi, good afternoon.
Now, what are the realistic expectations of the proposed deal?
Well, so I think that we have to understand that there are still 50 hostages being held by the genocidal terrorists in the Gaza Strip. They've now been in captivity since the 7th of October 2023, almost 650 days. And now we are almost trying, as it were, to horse trade with these genocidal terrorists in order to get as many people out as possible. Of those 50 hostages, at least 23 are believed to be alive. We're not exactly certain of their exact physical state. We've seen in the past that the live hostages had been abused, starved, malfed, and so we are really trying to push to get all of the hostages home at one foul swipe. But the problem is, and here partially Prime Minister Netanyahu's skepticism, is the understanding that these terrorists will never allow the release of all of the hostages. The hostages are their insurance policy, that they will survive, that they will continue to be able to fight to destroy Israel and murder more Jews. And at the end of the day, there's no chance whatsoever, I believe, that they will give up the hostages through negotiations. So Prime Minister Netanyahu's position is, let's try and get back what we can now. And if we have to go back to fighting, then that's what we'll have to do.
And what's the reaction of Hamas or regional mediators?
Well, so is actually digging its heels in. Hamas wants more and more demands in order to receive receive permission to release the hostages that it's holding. They're demanding, for example, that the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation stop working. This is an organization that has handed out 69 million meals to the Gaza population over the last month and a half. Why do they refuse to allow them to continue functioning? Because the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation circumvents Hamas. It is not aid going through the UN organizations, through Hamas, and then to the Gaza population, but rather aid that is going directly to the Gazan population. And that obviously cuts Hamas out of the loop. And so they are offended. So they want a different aid mechanism that will ensure that they can continue controlling that mechanism, continue dominating the Gazan population, and continue fighting on. They want the release of terrorists who have been convicted for hundreds, if not thousands, of murders. They want the release of Abdullah Barghouti. This is a vile terrorist that was responsible for the murder of 67 people in different suicide bombing and bombing attacks. This is a man who, I actually stood in court with him. I was previously a prosecutor. I stood in court with him when he confessed, and he said, I confess to everything. If only I had the chance, I would have continued killing more Jews. He is unrepentant, and that's what he will do.
Okay, Maurice, thank you so much for joining us on the program today.
Thank you very much, Anewz.
South Korea says the United States has demanded, as part of ongoing trade talks, that Seoul join efforts to curb China. A senior official from Seoul's trade ministry said Washington is making joint action against China, a precondition for bilateral cooperation in the shipbuilding sector. The official noted that the US sees China's growing market share in shipbuilding as a threat and is looking to South Korea as a strategic partner. The official added that the US is also asking Seoul to increase investments in and purchases of American energy and agricultural products in exchange for negotiating a reduction of reciprocal tariffs currently set at 25%. Malaysian Foreign Minister Mohammed Hassan has urged greater cooperation between ASEAN and its East Asian partners, highlighting its importance in navigating geopolitical challenges.
Malaysia's Foreign Minister Mohammed Hassan has emphasized the importance of cooperation between ASEAN and its East Asian partners to navigate ongoing economic and geopolitical challenges. His remarks came during the East Asia Summit in Kuala Lumpur, part of the broader ASEAN meeting hosted by Malaysia, which holds the bloc's rotating chair this year.
2 decades later, the East Asia Summit stands more relevant and vital than ever. Today's world faces a complex web of crises that jeopardize global peace, shared prosperity, and well-being of people everywhere. From the outbreak of conflicts and rising great power competition to economic fragmentation, rapid technological shifts, and transnational security threats.
The summit is taking place amid renewed concerns over US trade policy after Washington announced steep tariffs on 8 ASEAN members starting August 1st. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio attended the summit and held talks with his counterparts during his first trip to Asia since taking office. He reaffirmed Washington's commitment to the bloc.
We've been engaged for a very long time, and we have strong partnerships we have no intention of abandoning, but rather strengthening and building upon. The United States is a committed partner to ASEAN. It's central to the regional architecture. It shapes its dynamics. In fact, ASEAN is the preeminent mechanism by which we engage with a region that we do not consider to be the periphery of any nation state.
ASEAN, a bloc of 10 Southeast Asian nations, is collectively the world's 5th biggest economy.
Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliev met Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinan in Abu Dhabi for talks on various aspects of the interstate normalization agenda. According to Azerbaijan's foreign ministry, the leaders reaffirmed that bilateral negotiations are the most effective format for normalization. They agreed to continue direct, result-oriented talks, advance border delimitation efforts, and pursue confidence-building measures. Both sides instructed relevant commissions to maintain practical work on key issues. The EU welcomed the meeting in Abu Dhabi between Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinan and Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliev. Spokesperson Anita Hipper praised the progress and reaffirmed the EU's strong support for the normalization process and the draft peace agreement agreed in March 2025. Joining us now is commentator Anna Vandinski from Brussels, Belgium. Anna, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me.
Now, what specific support is the EU prepared to provide, and how might it accelerate the peace process?
Well, I think that the most representative in these talks are, although not present physically, was President Erdogan, the long-standing candidate country for joining the European Union. I think that when we see these talks, we should also think about people who showed a tremendous political will, like President Erdogan, who was meeting with Prime Minister Pashinan before these talks. And his role in normalizing this relationship is absolutely tremendous and I would say unprecedented. And here we can see how much political will can do when there is this desire to achieve peace and prosperous Caucasus. Because I think that when we see Minsk group of the OSCE, there is a certain air of disappointment, I would say, that in so many years they achieved so little, while President Erdogan, with his, I would say, drive that is very characteristic to his political personality, he really made it possible. And also we see a great intensity in these talks, because last time the leaders of Azerbaijan, President Aliev and Prime Minister Pashinan, met in Tirana in May. So it's a very short period of time for politics that these two leaders of very important countries, very important for regional stability, and not only are meeting again, and they had also conversations tete-a-tete. They were also talking to each other without presence of any other diplomat or members of delegation. So it shows that there is a growing trust and there is a huge political will finally to achieve an agreement, which was on the table in March. So the project is already there, but there are elements that are crucial to make this peace deal stable. For example, I understand that Azerbaijan demands to ensure constitutionally that there are no claims anymore to any Azerbaijan territories. It's very important that it's not only political will, but also that there is a juridical dimension. Basically, I think that that it's also very significant that, for example, these sensitive issues as Zangezur corridor was mentioned, because I would like to remind you that the great Azerbaijani, the great statesman in general, President Heydar Aliyev, was talking then about the best way to build trust, to have economic relations, to have trade, to start doing projects together. So I think that it's from one side, it's of course it's great that they touched again this trust building measures, this Zangezur corridor construction. But from the other side, I feel a little bit nostalgic because I think that would spare many lives if then they would listen to Heydar Aliyev, and he was really an amazing statesman and a great man.
Okay. Now, Anna, you did mention there in your answer that the bilateral format that was chosen by the leaders was a show of rebuilding trust. How significant is the shift to direct negotiations for reducing external influence and building durable peace?
Well, we have noticed that all these big formats were not so efficient in the end of the day, because there was a lot of hope related to the OSCE group. And we have seen that in so many years, I would say in decades, they were not so effective. So I think that the leaders being together, tete-a-tete, are talking directly to each other, meeting over this very short period of time. If you think May, July, it's a very short, actually over 1 month, over one calendar month they met again. It shows that there is the most efficient, the most, I would say, optimistic for many people, because let us be clear that it's not only about Azerbaijan, it's not only about Armenia, it's about the prosperity of the Caucasus. And I think that a lot of people feel in a way harmonized. They feel hope. They feel that this format, when two leaders finally they are shaking hands, they are talking to each other, they are talking to each other about the most sensitive issues, this format can lead to an agreement, a stable agreement, and stable, prosperous Caucasus, and that's what everybody wishes. And if we started our conversation with the European Union. I think that the European Union is at most interested to see a prosperous Caucasus, as we all. And so I think that everybody, including Marco Rubio, by the way, we should mention him as well, because he said that he hopes that very soon there will be a peace deal in the Caucasus, and we start counting the step-by-step measures to prosperity of the Caucasus. Peace and prosperity are the key words.
Okay, and lastly, Anna, what are the next steps agreed upon by the leaders following this meeting? How much do we know there?
Oh, well, we know that they will meet again soon. That's what we know, because the delegations were very, they worked at exact tasks. So now they are phased when they are trying to work out the exact proposals, and they are trying to smoothen the points which are not, let's say, universally agreed upon. So, I mean, that is a difficult stage, of course, but we have to think about that globally. There is a desire and there is an agreement to sign a deal, to conclude the deal. So I think that we are very close to it. And especially I'm hopeful when I heard that Secretary of State Marco Rubio said that he sees that the peace deal is coming very soon. So I think that we will see very soon, maybe in coming months, maybe even next month, we will see this meeting, because we know that presidents and prime ministers, they work without holidays. So I hope that it will come really very soon, because that was the spirit of this meeting.
Okay, Anna, thank you so much for joining us on the program today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Iran has dismissed what it calls exaggerated reports about the return of undocumented Afghan refugees, saying that the recent spike is part of a routine trend that accelerated briefly during the Israeli and US strikes on the country last month. Tura Shiraliu has more in Tehran.
Interior Ministry's Director General of Foreign Nationals and Immigrants, Nader Yorahmadi, denied the exaggerated reports on return of undocumented Afghans. Speaking on the state IRIB TV, he said in the first 100 days of Iranian year, which starts on 21st March, about 718,000 illegal refugees have left Iran, which is a routine procedure. Yorahmadi said every year some 1 million Afghans return to their country, but the recent departures were accelerated by the Israeli-US attacks in which civilian areas were also targeted. According to the Interior Ministry official, the peak of departures was last week, when more than 29,000 refugees returned to Afghanistan in one day. Since then, the figure has decreased to 13,000 daily. He also said the rise in the arrest of illegal Afghans during the 12-day war was because of the increase in the number of checkpoints across the country and the wartime security conditions, and not a planned measure against illegal Afghan refugees. Yorahmadi said with the completion of the scheduled departure of illegal foreign nationals, more services will be provided to documented refugees. The Interior Ministry has put the total number of refugees in Iran at about 6.1 million and plans to reduce it to 3 million to match the 3% global standard, as Iran's population will hit 90 million next year. The majority of refugees in Iran are Afghan nationals who fled to neighboring Iran from the war in their country in the last 40 years. Tura Shiraliu, reporting for Anewz TV, Tehran.
Afghanistan is stepping up efforts to strengthen regional cooperation and rebuild key sectors, from modernising its banking system to exploring new opportunities in international rail connectivity. Officials are actively engaging with partners abroad. Tamim Bahis has more in Kabul.
Amid all the challenges, Afghanistan is seeking to enhance its economic and trade relations with regional and international partners. In Morocco, the acting governor of the Afghanistan Bank, Nur Ahmad Agha, attended the 23rd annual summit of the Islamic Financial Service Board. On the sidelines of the event, he met with the chairman of the board, Dr. Riaz, to discuss improving Afghanistan's banking sector in line with Sharia principles. The meeting also focused on capacity building and training opportunities. The acting governor urged for greater technical support and cooperation from the board in strengthening Afghanistan's financial infrastructure. The summit was held in the Moroccan capital, Rabat, from July 1st to 3rd, bringing together representatives from 34 central banks of Islamic countries. Meanwhile, in another effort to boost regional connectivity, Afghanistan took part in a major international rail conference in China. Deputy Minister of Public Works for Railways, Muhammad Ishaq Sahibzada, led a delegation to the 12th World Congress of the International Union of Railways, hosted by China. Afghanistan has been a member of the UIC since 2013 and views railway expansion as key to its trade and economic growth. These developments come as Afghanistan continues to look for ways to integrate more deeply into regional economic frameworks despite ongoing internal and international challenges. Tamim Bahis reporting for Anewz from Kabul, Afghanistan.
Kalbajar, a stunning mountainous region of Azerbaijan, is undergoing rapid transformation. An international group of travellers, led by the Most Travelled People Club, is exploring these liberated territories, witnessing firsthand the remarkable pace of reconstruction alongside the lasting marks of the past. Our correspondent Leyla Rahimli brings us this report.
We are now in Kalbajar, a breathtaking region nestled deep in the mountains of eastern Zengezur. Today marks a special moment in a truly unique journey. This visit is a part of an expedition organized by the world's famous MTP, the Most Traveled People Club. The group includes 30 travelers from 15 countries, all led by the club's founder, American explorer Charles Whaley. So what is their goal? To explore places that are often off the radar and to understand the stories that maps don't tell. Over the past 3 years, MTP members have visited Karabakh and Eastern Zangezur more than 1,000 times. But each visit offers something new, especially now as a large-scale reconstruction is visibly transforming the region. This morning, the group toured Kelbecer's newly restored city center, where they saw freshly paved roads, modern government offices, and brand new residential buildings. One of the most exciting developments is the revival of İstisu, a once famous Soviet-era spa resort, now being rebuilt as a major wellness destination with modern infrastructure. There is a strong contrast here. The scars of the past are still present, but so is progress. Roads, bridges, power lines, and homes are rising from the ground, and all of this is happening at a remarkable speed. Later today, the journey will continue to Lachin, another key district where major developments is underway, including hundreds of homes for returns. For many in this group, this isn't just another travel experience, it's a rare chance to witness how a region recovers, not just physically, but socially, economically, and emotionally. And this, for Azerbaijan, it's an opportunity to share the story with the world. This international team includes experienced travelers, bloggers, photographers, tourism professionals, and even travel tech founders. Many of them have visited over 100 countries. For most, it's their first time visiting Azerbaijan's liberated regions, and while they've explored many post-conflict areas before, they say what stands out here is the scale and speed of recovery. Their impressions, photos and stories will soon reach audiences across Europe, Asia and North America, helping to show the world what is really happening here beyond the headlines.
These are the updates for now. Thank you for watching and stay tuned to Anewz.